Good afternoon, and welcome to the Stations of the Cross. Today, our meditation is by Father Jim Nesbitt, The Way of Sorrows. The first station is the unjust judge. Jesus is brought to the court of Pilate. The gospel account of John tells us that this takes place on a stove pavement with a judge's bench. Today, that pavement in the fortress where Pilate lived is still there, and the large stones bear the marks of the soldiers' games. Jesus is bound and is brought before Pilate to await judgment. He has already been condemned by the Jewish leaders, but without Pilate's agreement, he may not be crucified. The life of Jesus is in the hands of Pilate, and the governor tries again and again to free him, for he knows his innocence. Finally, Pilate gives in to the crowd, and Jesus is condemned to the cross. Condemned more by Pilate's weakness than his judgment. In him there is no special bearing, nothing to make us look at him, no appearance to attract our attention. He is shut off and avoided by all, a man of suffering, one grown accustomed to infirmity. He is one from whom people hide their eyes. We avoid him and hold him in no esteem. Pilate takes a seat on the judge's chair in the place known as the stone pavement, Golgotha to the Hebrews. Then he says to the Jews, "Look at your king." At this the crowd shouts back, "Away with him! Take him away and crucify him!" In the end, Pilate does hand Jesus over to them to be crucified. Here I see Jesus in chains of iron, waiting the judgment of Pilate. He stands calmly and waits. With Pilate, there is no such peace. As the scriptures record his going in and out of his apartment, coming to the judgment seat and then returning to the house only to come out again. Slowly the activity becomes clear, and I know what is going on. Pilate is trying to free Jesus. What should be a simple decision is extremely difficult for this Roman governor. He is the model politician, and he must please everyone. He needs to be just so that he can live with his conscience. Yet he must please the people so that he can remain popular. And finally, he must do whatever will keep the peace so that his superiors in Rome will be happy. It is a delicate job, and Pilate is an expert. He goes back and forth with offers and counter-offers. He has Jesus scourged, but is not enough. Finally, Pilate bows to the crowd. He preserves the peace, but to do it, he must violate his conscience. Such is the work of politics. I can clearly see the two figures standing, face one another. On that stone pavement, Jesus is in iron chains, with the freedom that is the gift to all God's children. And Pilate, without the chains, yet completely bound and unable to do his own will. How often am I in my own life bound by the desire to please others, and so hindered by the contrast chains of iron would be freedom. It is also always so easy, so explainable, so understandable. Yet even when bound by popular opinion, how I envy the freedom of Jesus in iron chains. But in reality, that freedom is always open to us. Pilate never discovers how very simple it is to say, "Jesus is innocent. He will not die." Merciful Father, hear my prayer for freedom. I know that you give me freedom because I am your child. Never let me give this freedom up, no matter what others may think, no matter if it is against the tide. no matter if it is unpopular. Help me always to do your will. May I always understand clearly that no matter the reward, there is nothing so terrible as accepting the slavery of sin in place of your freedom. At the cross her station keeping, stood the mournful mother weeping, close to Jesus to the last. The second station, accepting the crossbeam. In crucifixion, the prisoner would normally carry a beam that would be attached crosswise to a standing stake that remained on the hill of execution, a sign listing name and the offense demanding death, hung around the neck so that people would know the reason for the execution. So the beam of the cross is brought out and placed on the shoulders of Jesus. It is heavy, but more important, its length makes it awkward to carry. It must be balanced carefully on the shoulder, and at this point in the life of Jesus, his agility is not the best. Though he is harshly treated, he submits and does not open his mouth. He is like a lamb going to slaughter, or a sheep about to be sheared. He is silent and does not say a word, oppressed and condemned. He is taken away, and who would think any more about him? Jesus is led away, and carrying the cross by himself, he goes out toward what is called the place of the skull, Golgotha to the Hebrews. Here, I must learn acceptance of the cross, something that takes different forms in the lives of different people. But for everyone, it is demanding, difficult, and most important, necessary. In the lives of some, it is a talent or ability that may serve the Lord and the church, but at the same time, something one would rather ignore than pay the cost in time and energy that development would require. For some, it is a physical or psychological difficulty that may not be escaped. In such a case, the choice is either to carry the cross or be crushed by it. Often the cross is of moral nature in the form of demands of the Christian life. Here, one may turn from the cross and ignore the responsibility either by leaving the Christian community or staying in it and living as a hypocrite. But no person at any place or any time is without a cross. It is a part of Christian life, and the only path open to the Christian is the one that Jesus takes. Receive the cross. Accept the cross, carry the cross, but the Lord has a word of encouragement for me. The cross always looks worse than it is because I never have to carry it alone. The Lord is with me. Father, I seek your light and your strength. The cross is before me, and I am slow to accept it. It seems to me that others have a lighter or more interesting cross. In spite of my words, I even suspect secretly that there are those without a cross at all. But this is my cross before me, and I would pick it up and carry it. Fill me with your power, that force that allowed Jesus to carry his cross, and I will carry mine. Through her heart his sorrow sharing, all his bitter anguish bearing. Now at length the sword has passed. The third station, Jesus falls under the cross. The scriptures do not record the falls of Jesus, but certainly as we consider the weakened condition of Jesus, the load that he carries in the crowd in the streets, it is apparent that the way of the cross is difficult and the falls frequent. This is the first of the stations that takes place outside of the palace where Pilate lives. Even in Jerusalem of today, this means crushing and surging crowds that are indigenous to the Oriental marketplace. Perhaps this fall is simply the result of a crowd more interesting in shopping than the execution that is now in progress. Jesus falls. The crossbeam slips from his shoulder and falls on top of him. But he rises, picks it up, and continues on his way. By the Lord are the steps of a person set firmly, and it is the Lord who approves the way. Though one falls, he does not lie prostrate, because the hand of the Lord is always there to lift him up. I have reached old age now, and never in my life as a young person until today have I ever seen a just person deserted by the Lord. Though he is in the form of God, he does not think that equality with God is something to be seized. So he humbles himself and takes the form of a slave, and is born in the likeness of people. He is known to be of human blood, and this is how he humbles himself, obediently accepting death, even death on a cross. I see this first fall of Jesus as the result of the indifference of the crowd. The people are not evil or intent on hurting him. They are just involved in their own daily work and are not concerned with what Jesus is about. Many times in my own life, in various ways, I am jostled and pushed by others who are concerned with things that are more important to them than I am. I stumble and fall, hurt more by their indifference than by their pushing. I see that the answer to this situation can only be the answer of Jesus. Silently, Jesus gets up, picks up the crossbeam, and goes on. He has a tremendous understanding that I lack, but I must learn it. Each of these people pushing me is also carrying a cross, and I have to become aware of it. Some crosses are more visible than others, but each has one. It is only my indifference to the cross of others that prompts my unkind word or condemnation. Jesus, who is only too aware of the problems of others, goes on silently. Father, give me the vision of your Son, Jesus. Prevent my problems from binding me to the real problems of others. Do not let my concern for myself consume my life and turn me from service to others. I seek to know and do your will. It is concern for your will, your love, not concern for my comfort, that enables me to carry my cross in comfort. Oh, how sad and sore distressed was that mother highly blessed, of the sole begotten one. Jesus notices Mary. This station commemorates the meeting of Jesus and Mary on the path to Calvary. Such an encounter certainly takes place because the scriptures record the presence of Mary on the hill of the crucifixion. She is probably part of the small crowd that accompanies Jesus through the crowded streets of Jerusalem. And this meeting takes place over and over, again as their eyes meet on the journey. Her suffering increases each time she sees her own son, and is able to do nothing to preserve or comfort the life that begun in her own womb. The suffering of Jesus also increases each time he looks at her and sees her terrible sorrow. She is so innocent and so afflicted. Jesus and Mary, partners in the sorrow of the cross. Simeon blesses them and says to Mary, his mother, "This child is destined for the downfall and for the rise of many people in Israel. He is a sign that will be opposed, and even you shall be pierced with a sword, so that the secret thoughts of many hearts may be made visible." Seeing his mother there with the disciple that he loves, Jesus says to his mother, "Woman, this is now your son." Then turning, he says to the disciple, "This now is your mother." From that very moment on, the disciple takes care of the woman. I can only imagine the horror of this moment for Jesus. There is the violence of the arrest, the cruelty of the guards, the injustice of the trial, the anticipation of the crucifixion, and now the suffering that he brings on this innocent woman. She has done nothing to merit such pain, and perhaps she does not even understand why her son should be so treated. But she is his mother. She must be here, and she must share in this moment. How often in my own life have innocent people suffered because of what I had to do? How often have I been the innocent victim of what another must do in conscience? Like Jesus, I must follow faithfully, follow the Lord in all his teachings, carefully doing all that the Father asks of me. I must trust that the Lord will support those around me in any suffering that comes to them through the following of the Lord. And I firmly believe in faith that there is more suffering for everyone in not doing the will of the Father. For Jesus, and even for me, to turn from the will of the Father because of the pain that it causes others, even those that I love, is to commit the same sin as Pilate, the politician, that of spurning the Lord to please people. Christ above in torment hangs, she beneath beholds the pangs of her dying glorious Son. The fifth station, the unwilling helper. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all record this forcing of Simon to carry the cross of Jesus. It is probably not the usual procedure, but because of the condition of Jesus after the all-night trials, the beatings, and the crowning of thorns, there is reason to fear that he might die before crucifixion. The scriptures record the speed of the death of Jesus on the cross before either of the thieves. And Pilate is so surprised that he demands proof of death. Lest the executioners be cheated of their work, Simon is conscripted and Jesus is saved for the cross. Even under Roman law, it is not legal to conscript some passers-by to bear the crossbeam of execution, but these are members of an occupation army not too concerned with the finer points of the law. They do whatever they want with the people under their control. Jesus weighs to all the people. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny himself, take up the cross every day, and follow in my steps. Whoever truly wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses life for my sake will save it. As they lead him away, they take hold of a man by the name of Simon from Cyrene, who is returning from work in the fields. They put the crossbeam on Simon's shoulders for him to carry it behind Jesus. As I look at the scene of this poor man returning from the fields, already tired from the day's work, perhaps cursing his luck at being this place at this time, I see myself. How often I study the factors that lead to my own misfortune. If only I had left earlier or worked an extra hour, I would not be here now. Certainly these thoughts fill the head of Simon at this point. But a day is coming in the near future where Simon will gather people around him and speak of this day that he carried the cross for Jesus. This is the most important day in his whole life. In fact, it is the only day of his life that I know anything about. I can only wonder at such days in my own life, days when everything goes wrong, days when I would rather be anyone else or anywhere else. In time, one such day may come to be the most important day ever for me. A day I would never choose can become the day I will remember with the greatest joy. Simon reminds me that no matter how terrible it all may appear at a particular moment, I simply do not know the Lord's plan and what he is doing with this moment. Father, help me to value every moment. Let me always seek your will and trust in your powerful concern to bring good out of even the most desperate situation. May I never waste time wondering how I got to such a situation, but only seek your will. For I believe that no matter how desperate my state, no matter if I brought myself here or arrived here as a result of forces beyond my control, you are here with me. I turn to you in the sure knowledge that you make everything work together for the good of those who love you. Is there one who would not weep, whelmed in misery so deep? Christ, dear mother, to behold. The sixth station, the true image. Although there is no scriptural evidence to support the event, popular devotion has named a woman who comes forward as Jesus is walking to Calvary and wipes his face with her own veil. It is her name that comes from this episode because Veronica, their icon, means true image. Jesus, in gratitude for her kindness, allows a perfect portrait of his own face to be formed on her veil with the very elements that are wiped from his face. Veronica returns to her place in the crowd and looks down at her veil in surprise and love for the mighty Lord, who allows no act of kindness, no matter how small or unimportant, to go unnoticed or unrewarded. Every single gift to Jesus is returned 100-fold. Now they are singing songs that mock me, and I am a joke to them. They hate me and they stand at a distance, but they do not hesitate to spit on my face. Finally, they have thrown off their chains, and now they lord it over me. There is nothing to restrain them in their treatment of me. The God who says, let the light shine in darkness, show us the glory of God shining in the face of Christ, so that we may make it known to others. This great treasure we carry in a fragile vase, so that it may be clear to us that its great power comes from God and not from us. Because of the very nature of this story, Veronica is the patroness of all artists, and she is an important lesson for all people. As I enter places of worship in different countries, particularly those touched by the Renaissance, I see marble statues, the great glass mosaics, stained glass windows, and wood carvings. But I remember Veronica. She is there to remind me that the portrait of Jesus is never fully represented in art, no matter how beautiful. The true image of Jesus is only reproduced in the sweat, the dust, the tears, the blood, and the energy expended in carrying the cross, in doing the will of the Father. This lesson of the true image is particularly directed toward the artist, people who are able to produce beautiful, even inspired pictures and statues, but do not make the Lord present in their own lives, have failed. All the art in the world will not excuse my life if I fail to produce that true image, which is the life of the saint, not the work of the artist. Only there is the glory of the living God visible. Can the human heart refrain from partaking in her pain? In that mother's pain untold. The seventh station, Jesus falls again. Again, Jesus falls, but this time without the crossbeam, because it is now being carried by Simon. The path from the fortress of Pilate to Calvary is not a particularly difficult walk, and certainly not for one who is in the habit of walking everywhere. But Jesus is walking to his own terrible death. He is distracted by the suffering of his mother, and he is bumped and jostled by crowds of people involved in their own affairs. After all, it is neither the first nor the last crucifixion for Jerusalem. It is our own failings that he bears, and it is our own sufferings that he endures. We look upon him as one struck down and punished by God himself. But he is pierced for our crimes and burdened by our sins. Upon him comes the punishment that pays our debt. In his infirmity is our healing. While bringing many children into the glory of God, it was only fitting that their leader in this work of salvation should be made perfect in suffering. Such is the will of God, for whom and through whom all things are. Again, I see the fall of Jesus as the result of the great indifference of the crowd. Even today, as one walks these streets in great religious procession, a similar situation exists. The people see so many processions, so many religious ceremony, just as this crowd sees so many executions. I wonder how many people fall around me because of my indifference, my lack of concern as to what they are about. I am involved with so many things, there is not time to be bothered. So many people, so many crosses, so little attention. I recall how the Pharisees and the scribes, the so-called good people, are condemned by Jesus for their attitude to Zacchaeus and to Magdalene. These people are really not so bad, they just do not have time for people who fall. Their friends are the strong and the secure. Jesus chooses to be with those who fall and rise again. If anyone in that crowd extends a hand or turns to help Jesus, their name ranks with Simon or Veronica, but no one turns. This is just another criminal falling down on his way to death. And I do not know a single name of a member of that crowd. How many people around me, perhaps, do not rise from their falls because of the want of a hand? My hand. Bruised, derided, cursed, defiled, she beheld her tender child, all with bloody scourges rent. The eighth station, the charitable women. In the city of Jerusalem, there is an organization of women concerned with executions. Their concern is not a political one, neither for nor against the Romans. It is purely humanitarian. They assemble and go to the place of execution to do what they can to help the prisoner and the family through the terrible ordeal of the execution. They are the ones who bring the wine that is drugged with myrrh and offered to Jesus by one of the soldiers. This drink is prepared by the women to be given to the condemned to quench the thirst, one of the principal results of crucifixion, and at the same time to deaden the pain as much as possible. It may even hasten death. Their interest is in Jesus, the condemned, not Jesus the teacher, not Jesus the Messiah. They are rewarded by Jesus who turns and speaks to them. The high places of Avon are going to be destroyed, and because of the sin of Israel, thistles and thorns are going to grow in their altars. Then they are going to turn and cry on the mountains and the hills, "Cover us, fall on us." A great crowd of people follows him, including women who are crying and beating their breasts over him. Jesus turns and speaks to them, "You daughters of Jerusalem must not weep for me. Save your tears for yourselves and your children. There are days coming when people will say, 'Happy are those without children, wombs without babies, breasts never nursing.' They are going to call out to the hills and to the mountains, 'Cover us, fall on us.'" These good women are concerned about the terrible things that are happening to Jesus now. But for the first time in this work of charity, they find someone who is more concerned with them than his own suffering. Jesus is the light of the world, the one with clear and perceptive knowledge of people. I am often deceived by appearances, but Jesus is not. The Pharisees look with pity on the blind, but Jesus sees that they are blinder than those they pity. In wars, I shed more tears for the innocent victims than for the truly deformed individuals who caused the war. Jesus sees and Jesus knows for whom tears are appropriate. His is a physical suffering that is to end in glory. Weep for the cause of the suffering. Weep for the sinner. Jesus looks at me making the stations and says, "Don't pity me. Don't waste your tears. It is your own life that causes this suffering. Jesus walks to the glory prepared for him by the Father. If I must shed tears, then let them be for me and for the pain that I cause others. Father, help me always to be aware of the suffering in the world and my part in causing that suffering. Let me look to the needs and problems of others rather than being completely concerned with my needs. But never allow me to settle for tears, to think that it is enough to know and to pity. Move me to action and make my person the instrument of your own love. Take me, use me, and love the world through me. O thou mother, fount of love, touch my spirit from above. Make my heart with thine accord. Jesus rises for the third time. Jesus falls for the third and last recorded time. This fall is right at the place of execution and is born of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. I wonder how often he does fall on the road to the crucifixion, for the stations only record the 3. But also this is the only station that is repeated, and is repeated 3 times. The reason is the rising. 3 times Jesus gets up and goes on. 3 times he rises and continues on the road. In no other station is there a clearer picture of the whole coming of Jesus than in this commemoration of his fall. It is a complete blending of Jesus, God, and man. He is the bridge between the Father and the human community, and in a real way, he is our meeting point. It would not be irreverent to say that in the fall, with the lack of help and the difficulty in continuing, Jesus, God discovers what it is to be human. But in the rising from the road and the renewed determination, I discover what it is to be the Lord. This is the image of the true Christian throughout the history of the world. I am always human, so I fall and fall again. Frequently, terribly. I fall through neglect, through weakness, through sin. But never ceasing to be a child of God, I get up again and again. Here is the meeting place of the Christian and the Lord in the personal falling and rising, the daily pattern of my life. The goal is not achieved because I do not fall, but because I rise as often as I do fall. It is for my sake that this station is repeated 3 times. The truly destructive factor in my life is not the falling, but the unwillingness to get up and go on. The Father always reaches for me when I fall, because Jesus, his Son, knows what it is to fall. This is the pattern of the life of Jesus, death and resurrection. O thou mother, fount of love, touch my spirit from above. Make my heart with thine accord. The 10th station, Jesus is prepared. This particular station records one of the steps in preparation for crucifixion, the removal of the prisoner's clothing. This may be an application of the recognized right of an army to pillage. Instead of a town that is taken, here it is Jesus who is their work, and they take his last possessions as their privilege for doing their job. Certainly, Jesus no longer needs the clothing, and it does provide some prize for the gamblers below the cross. Even though it is just a way of passing time, the dice game is meaningless without some stake. While for the Roman, this is just a step to the cross, for the Hebrew, with a particular sensitivity to nudity, this is a terrible humiliation. They look down on me and enjoy my suffering. They share my clothing, and out among themselves, for my robe they cast dice. But you, my Lord, do not stand away from me. You are my help. Come to my aid. Rescue my soul from the threat of death, and my life from those destroying it. After Jesus is crucified, the soldiers take his garments and divide them among themselves 4 ways. But there is also his robe, which is without seam and woven in a single piece from top to bottom. Finally, they decide we should not destroy it by tearing it. Let's throw the dice to see who wins it. The clothes are taken from Jesus, and there is only one thing he has left in the world: his life. And that is going to be taken away. When Jesus became human, he received many things, but now they are all being stripped away. Yet something interesting is happening here. Jesus is born true God and true man, yet, looking into the crib, it is not easy to remember that he is God. In the process of his human life, things are stripped away as he gives up family, home, and other things are taken from him. Yet as more and more is removed, he appears more and more godly until everything is taken. And as he walks from the tomb on Easter, it is difficult to remember that he is a man. The secret of this process is his divinity, and as more of the humanity is removed, the divine life becomes clearer. This same stripping takes place in my own life, with the loss of agility, strength, and friends within the whole aging process. Finally, I too will give up my life, and if I accept it, the process will be the same for me, with his life becoming more and more visible with each passing day. If I do not accept his life, this slow process of stripping will leave me with nothing. Every person who walks this earth faces this stripping, but each one of us determines whether there will be anything left when the process ends. Father, give me the life of your Son. May his power fill me and preserve me to everlasting life. Fill me more and more until I may say that I no longer live, but Jesus lives in me. Make me feel as thou hast felt. Make my soul to glow and melt with the love of Christ my Lord. The 11th station, Jesus is fixed to the cross. None of the evangelists mention that Jesus is nailed to the cross, although it is implied. Crucifixion is such a terrible form of execution, too widespread in use and too well known in the Roman provinces to require any explanation. The Romans would attach a person to a cross in many ways, but Christian tradition favors the nailing because of the prophecies about the Messiah. Now the crossbeam is reclaimed from Simon and laid on the ground with Jesus laid on top of it. Before leaving the palace of Pilate, 2 holes were drilled in it at a distance to correspond with the arm span of Jesus. Now there is only 1 blow with the hammer, or at the most 2, and the nail moves easily through the flesh into the wood. When both hands are attached, Jesus is lifted by the beam and set on the pole that remains on the hill of execution. Then the feet are nailed, and Jesus is crucified. I feel like water that is poured out. All my bones are aching. My heart feels like wax and is melting within my chest. My throat is as dry as baked clay, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You have brought me to the very point of death. Many are around me, and evildoers close in upon me. They nail my hands and feet, and I can see every one of my bones. 2 others, who are criminals also, are brought with him to be crucified. When they all arrive at the skull place, as it is called, they crucify him, and the criminals also, one on his right and one on his left. For each and every person, there is a cross in this life. It can be anything at all, and the scriptures would call it a responsibility, but they call it a cross. For some, it is weakness or problems, and for others, it is talents and abilities. But for each of us, it is demanding, and it is my particular role in this Christian community. The very special relationship comes to exist between the successful Christian and the cross. And this relationship may be seen in the stations. The first of the stations involving the cross, Jesus accepts it and then carries it. He falls with it and rises, continuing to Calvary where he is nailed to it. This is the process that I go through in my own life of identifying my cross, accepting my cross, and struggling with it in my own life. Over a lifetime, I will come to see that it is not only my burden, it is my strength. It will come to be for me not only a demanding road to walk, but my path to glory. Thus, the nailing means identification with the cross. Once I am identified with my cross, I will share in its glory, and therefore there can be no resurrection without the crucifixion. Holy Mother, pierce me through, in my heart each wound renew, of my Savior crucified. The 12th station, the suffering ends. The death by crucifixion is an awful one. According to doctors, Jesus probably suffocates. In the position in which a human body is placed on the cross, it is not possible to breathe. To catch a breath, the body must be forced up and the tension taken off of the arms by placing all the weight on the nail in the feet that is standing. When I consider the pain that is a part of gaining breath, I have some understanding of how important is each word of Jesus from the cross because of what it cost him to speak. Finally, the body no longer has the strength to raise itself up. There is no air, and Jesus dies. There appear to be two miracles in the death of Christ. First is his ability to think and speak clearly and forcefully from the cross. And second, the mercy of the Father in the speed of his death. Here, as I stand before the cross with the body of Jesus finally in peace, after his death, I can only feel relief that it is over. The fathers of the church see this cross now as a tree, the tree of life spoken of in the first book of the Bible, Genesis, and the last book of Revelation. On this tree hangs the body of Jesus, the fruit of the tree of life. Jesus promises that anyone eating this body and drinking his blood shall never see death, but shall live forever. This is the true meaning of the cross of Jesus, the tree of life, the promise of everlasting life. And I am invited to share in the fruit. But this is a difficult thing to accept and an impossible thing to understand as I approach the altar of the Lord for communion. How is this bread and wine, his body and blood? How can this bring me everlasting life? These are hard questions that constantly pick at me, but they are no more of a problem than the questions that assail the faithful band before the cross. What do Jesus' teachings on life and the sure help of the Father mean as they hold his corpse at the foot of the cross? Surely the faithful band of disciples thought about such things and probably spoke of them. But on Easter Sunday, these questions evaporate in a blaze of glory. And on that day, the disciples laugh with Jesus about such problems. This guarantees that one day I too can laugh with Jesus about my own questions. Faith is difficult today, but it was no easier at the foot of the cross. Lord Jesus, now you are at rest and at peace. Strengthen my faith and my hope. Let me love with your love so that sharing in your cross, I may also share in your glory. Let me share with thee his pain, who for all my sins was slain, who for me in torment died. The 13th station, the body comes off the cross. Finally, the crucifixion is over and Jesus is officially dead. A spear plunged in his heart for good measure, blood and water flow out, confirming the separation of blood found in the dead. The corpse is now removed from the cross, not an easy operation, as anyone who has ever had to do anything with a corpse knows. First, the nail is removed from the feet and then the crossbeam, with the body attached, taken down. The nails are removed and the crossbeam is set aside. Some effort is made to put the battered body into some semblance of repose, but the corpse has begun to stiffen, with the arms extended. Officially, the body becomes the property of Joseph until Jesus claims it again on Easter. Emotionally, this is one of the most moving of the stations, and it is often pictured as the Pietà, with Mary holding the corpse of Jesus. In fact, this stage of events must have been a relief to the small band of faithful followers around the cross. For those who love him, the only thought is, thank God it is over. And now as I look on the body of Jesus, there are two things that catch my eye. The great feeling of peace that is upon the face, and those arms that refuse to be closed. On the cross, the position of those arms made Jesus look stretched and tortured, but now they look like a ready embrace. This is the lesson of the body of Jesus for me. These two arms that beckon everyone are the very cause of the cross, but no less the cause of the look of peace that is upon his face. His peace is found in the ready welcome of everyone, the concern for all, the love for friends, and this is the place that the cross is found also. The body of Jesus teaches me that the love of people, the gift of peace, and the carrying of the cross are really all parts of the same. And looking at Jesus, I know that when the cross ends, the love and the peace remain. Lord Jesus, in looking at your body, I find hope for my life. Help me to embrace and to accept my cross. Let my arms be nailed open and never let them close to anyone. May my love unite and blend with yours, filling me and serving those around me, until I am locked in your embrace forever. I know, Jesus, that if I can only keep my arms open, the gift of peace will reign in my heart. And one day, on the very special day, when you come for me, my own arms will be set open, and your peace will be mine forever. Let me mingle tears with thee, mourning him who mourned for me, all the days that I may live. The 14th station, the body is sewn in the tomb. There is no complete agreement on this particular event among the evangelists. John sees Jesus embalmed with 100 pounds of ointment before burial. The others indicate that there is no time for embalming. Whatever the case, there is some speed involved, and Jesus is of necessity taken to a tomb that happens to be very close, only a few yards down the hill from the cross. The tomb is carved of stone and with wheel-shaped stone to roll across the front for a door. This is a tomb only the rich could afford. It is a gift from Joseph, who probably intended it for his own family. Like all such tombs, it has room for 4 to 20 bodies, but Jesus is the first to be buried there. Oppressed and condemned, he is carried off, and who considers any more what might become of him? When he leaves the land of the living and dies for the sin of his people, he is given a grave among the rich, buried with evildoers, even though he has never lied nor done evil. Standing before the tomb of Jesus today, it is impossible to feel anything but joy. The event of Easter Sunday so completely overshadows this tomb that everything else fades into insignificance. But I can see Joseph, John, Mary, and a few faithful followers standing before this tomb as they hear the dull thud of a stone closing. Surely they think that everything is over. The disciples now flee Jerusalem and head off to Emmaus, saying as much. There was such great hope for Jesus. He did such wonderful things. If only he could have lived longer, the cures and miracles could have converted all and prevented this moment. His teachings were so powerful. If only he could have lived longer and more people could have heard him, surely he would not have been killed. He showed such love and concern. If only he could have lived and more people could come to know him, we would not have to bury him now. But in fact, everything is moving along according to the plan of the Father. I know that now, but they did not. How many projects have been plucked from my hand unfinished? If only. For the Lord, there are no if-onlys. The people at this tomb are not burying a body as a conclusion. They are planting the seed of a beginning. They will know this on Easter, and I trust that one day I will know the same of all my unfinished work. Jesus, help me always work in faith and trust that you can complete and use what I am doing. Free me from the need to see my results, from a slavery to personal success. I want to do it for you and leave it when you want me to. By the cross with thee to stay, there with thee to weep and pray. All I ask of thee to give. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.